Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to the Weekly Armchair. This is your special version of Talk of the League. Now, so far, you've got two United fans talking about Tuchel being sacked. We are waiting for Ladimus Prime to come on board, but we'll keep you entertained in the meantime. Jamie, how you doing, my man?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, not too bad. I think the news today has been an interesting one, and it's been an interesting day for football. But other than that, I'm doing all right.
It certainly has. And listen, obviously, we got a couple of Chelsea mates. Been talking to them this morning. And yeah, listen, I was busy working this morning and hadn't heard anything. And it all came from nowhere. What a mental surprise, to be honest with you. Do you think it's justified him getting sacked?
No, top and bottom of it, no, not really. Um, I think if you were a betting man and you were placing bets on who was going to be the next manager, sort of post Scott Parker to leave, the likes of Lampard, Giggs, Rodgers, Giggs, what am I about Gerrard, um, Rodgers, they're all up there way before Thomas Tuchel is. He joined Chelsea 18 months ago. They were obviously in absolute turmoil after Frank Lampard, from where a club like that should be operating. Tuchel came in and they won the Champions League. They won the Champions League, they won the Super Cup, they won the Club World Cup, and then you know, just over a year after they've done all of that, he's gone. I understand knee-jerk reactions sometimes, but we're 6 games into the season so far. They're above Liverpool, and Liverpool are supposedly the best team to have ever existed and played a game of association football. They're not doing too bad. They're just having a bit of a wobble at the minute, and top teams go. But what we're seeing more and more each year is managers falling victim to, unfortunately, this idea that you have to be instantly successful, you have to have sustained success, or you go down the job centre and picking up, your employment seekers allowance, or whatever it's called these days. So I think it's a bizarre one. I think Todd Bowley's coming in and he's trying to stamp his mark in it, and he's made a big call. And I do think that he's got this one massively wrong.
Yeah, me too. I just so early on in the season, I rate Tuchel. I do. I give our Chelsea mates some stick, but I genuinely rate him. I think he's a good manager, a very good tactician, and was only 6 games, isn't it? 5, 6 games, 6 games into the season. I know they had a poor result last night against Zagreb, but it just seems way too early for me, and I just absolutely mad. Yeah, I just can't believe it. I mean, Chelsea, I feel, have been ran pretty well over the years. I know that obviously Chelsea fans will be able to tell me different, and with sort of the structure and recruitment, and they've wasted a lot of money on recruitment and whatever else. But I just, after spending 250 million and bringing players in, and then to get rid of a manager that was hopefully gonna, these are players that he wanted. That just seems nuts, doesn't it? You imagine if the shoe was on the other foot, United did that, or Liverpool, or someone else, it'd just be uproar. Do you not think?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, since Abramovich came in, Chelsea developed this ideology and this sort of persona of being a ruthless football club that were dedicated to short-term success. That's not, and I'm not saying that in a slanderous way to the club whatsoever. Whereas some clubs build projects for the long term and they really see the value in keeping a certain team around them. Chelsea have always chopped and changed, but it's worked for them. They've brought in managers that have got them success, and then when they outlive their usefulness and they reach that point in their tenure, then they've given them the boot. What I find bizarre is that became synonymous with the Abramovich era, but then Bowley coming in as a brand new owner, like you say, breaking the Premier League spending record for a summer transfer window for Thomas Tuchel, allowing a manager to bring in players that he clearly wanted. Aubameyang's come back in and said, I was really excited to be reunited with Thomas Tuchel. They've been reunited for 59 minutes, all in all, and then they've pulled the trigger. So whatever happens next, and I know we're going to come on to sort of Graham Potter and potential replacements. They've now got a group of players that have been brought in for vast amounts of money this summer that the new manager is going to have to play, regardless of whether he wants them or not, because they've just joined for premiums. So I don't really understand the logic behind it. most elite managers get to Christmas to see where they're at, but maybe the result last night was just a bridge too far for Todd Bowley, and he didn't see any value in keeping Thomas Tuchel. So, but I don't know. It's a weird hangover from the Abramovich era. Do you know what I mean? I don't know whether or not it's because Bowley's looked at what Abramovich did that brought him success and has gone, maybe I need to copy that blueprint. But the fact that you've not, if he brings in someone now who then goes on and wins the FA Cup in this year, or if they manage to do well in the Champions League, or whatever, it might look vindicated, and people might go, "Oh, actually, maybe he saw the big picture." But the problem is that that's not guaranteed. If they now keep slumping, like you say, they've lost a manager who I know people really rate Tuchel highly. I do rate him. I think he's in that good sort of bracket of really good managers. I don't think he's quite at the level of some of the top managers in the world, but he's clearly a very, very good coach. They've got rid of him, the players that he's brought in, and I think they're in for a bit of a whirlwind, and maybe a bit of a slippery slope.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Thanks for joining us, Ladimus. I hope you're well, buddy. Just want to get your thoughts on everything that's unfolded today, really. Obviously, we were just saying in the background, we rate Tuchel, and it's only been we're only 6 games into the season, and I think everybody was shocked by that this morning. But how are you? How are you on that?
Hi guys. Thanks for having me on. First of all,
You're welcome.
I don't know. It's Chelsea fans have been divided as a fan base for a very long time, for years. Not really agreeing on managers or certain players, and I don't know. It got like yesterday after the game, like it was a very poor result. A result, to be fair, was expected, at least from my point of view. I think we should have started a stronger team last night and tried to go for the win. I said when the group stage draw was made that if we underestimated this group, we could end up finishing second. And after the game yesterday, sorry, I was like, I did a review on Lewis's channel. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a Chelsea fan, and then I've been on like other streams and Skype calls and stuff with Chelsea fans, people just freaking out about the whole thing and asking questions about what's going on. And I went to bed at like 3 a.m. This morning, woke up, I've been at work, and I haven't had like my phone or anything on me to check things, what's been going on. So I know he got sacked, and the people I work with are not like into football or anything, so they don't care or know what's going on in this part of the scene. And then I'm on break. I look at my messages and someone's texting me Tuchel's got sacked, and I thought it was a joke from a rival fan. And I look through things. I look through Twitter, what's been going on, and I think it's a bit. My first reaction was it's reactionary. I even said this yesterday that if you sack Tuchel now, it'll be reactionary. I looked into it more. Apparently, Bowley was planning to do this. Apparently, they had a falling out. Tuchel's not necessarily happy about the project and stuff going forward. Yada yada yada. Bowley doesn't see Tuchel as being his guy to lead this going forward. Look, if he wants to sack him, I get it. It's fine. I'm not. As soon as I like rate Tuchel highly, I'm not necessarily going to say I'm angry about that as of now. My thing is, what is your plan? Because in terms of the backroom staff at Chelsea, we've let go of a lot of people. Yes, the majority of them weren't good enough anyway. But we let go of a lot of people. You haven't yet brought in footballing minds to run the club. We still don't have a director of football. Our scouts are from the old regime who are very, very poor. What is the plan? And it looks like Potter's the favorite. If you want Graham Potter, who I personally disagree with, I don't think Potter's anywhere near good enough. But if you want Graham Potter, what is that based on? Because I'm not going to say he doesn't know football, but you're not like you're not football. With all due respect, you're not footballing mind. Like, what makes you think Graham Potter is good enough? What makes you think Tuchel's not good enough? Or even if Tuchel, even like me thinking Tuchel is good enough, like that's, I guess, based on me being a fan. Or like, what makes him think Tuchel's not good enough? He doesn't have any footballing mind in charge of the club, or that he talks to, from what I know, that can give him advice on things. And I think the most important thing is, regardless of whatever manager we bring in, we need a director of football. The squad we currently have, we've had for the past number of seasons, it's filled with players for the most part that are just not good enough to compete consistently at the highest level. We brought in Tuchel, and for about a year or so, he raised up the level of these players, and we were able to go on a massive run to win the Champions League, and we were able to step into big games, believing that we can not just compete but beat Real Madrid, beat Man City, beat Liverpool. You saw the last season, the second leg against Real, being 3-1 down and going to the Bernabeu. There were still Chelsea fans that genuinely believed we could go and beat them. And we almost did it. Like, that shouldn't happen. This manager, it's going to come back to bite us that we've sacked him. I don't think there's any real plan in place that Bowley has, because like, if you're going to sack him, at least wait to the World Cup. There'll be managers available after the World Cup, like Luis Enrique, for example, who could come in. And I know I'm kind of rambling a lot. I'm sorry, but it's
no, you're absolutely fine. It's good to get your thoughts.
Yeah.
I had this conversation today. Actually, I think a few people in the chat mentioned Luis Enrique, and I think he would actually suit Chelsea very well. It's certainly one of my favourites to take over before Ten Hag, if I'm honest. I do worry, not worry, obviously, being a rival fan, you don't want to ever see any team struggle at all, and especially with particular owners. I think, United have learned the hard way over the last 17 years, and sometimes when you see other owners, it's easy to be able to empathise with another fan. But I think you're right with regards to Todd Bowley and his approach. I think that, he's come in, he's taken on a huge responsibility. He doesn't have the right people, which was either his fault or not. And I can't see that direction either. I can't see there being any other positive changes from Abramovich, and that's a big worry, I think.
There's no real, like, before I just came in, you guys were speaking about how the sacking culture at Chelsea, and people like to talk about it like it's kind of a negative, but the best clubs in the world, like, look at Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, two of the most successful clubs in the last, maybe say turn of the century, particularly Real in Europe. I would say they have a quote unquote sacking culture of managers that they get rid of every like 2 to 3 seasons or so. But the ethos they have within their club, the ethos Bayern Munich have within their club, they have a philosophy that they stick by, which means if they get rid of a manager and bring in a new one, the manager,
they've got footballing brains, haven't they?
They falls in line with that philosophy. The players they bring in falls in line with that philosophy, and we had that in the first decade. Roman, look at the likes with like Mourinho and Ancelotti and stuff. We had that, but then we got rid of our director of football in Manolo, and since then, the managers we've brought in, we brought back Mourinho, which was a good choice, but we didn't. We stopped backing him. Things turned sour. And to be fair, maybe people can say Jose was washed at that point. That's probably a different discussion to have. But then we went in and brought in Conte. He got back in his first year. We won the league. His second year, he didn't get back. Things turned very, very sour. We then said we wanted to go for a different style of play and different approach. We brought in Sarri. He wasn't properly back. Chelsea fans turned against him, and eventually he more or less got sacked come the end of the season. We then go for a rookie manager in Frank, and the excuse our board sold to us was that we were sanctioned, we can't sign any players, so no manager would be looking to come to Chelsea. Even though the following summer we spent 250 million or so on our squad. If any manager, or maybe not any manager, but a lot of top managers in world football, if you had said to them, I know we might have We can't buy anyone this summer. We've got a pretty good squad. We've got these talented young players that we want to see what they're about. Come in this season, quote unquote, free hit. If you don't get top four, it's not necessarily a problem to you. You'll have the next summer to start building the squad that you want. You could have
But
said
this,
that to a majority of managers that would have worked. They didn't. They brought in Frank.
yeah.
They ended up sacking Frank with a poor squad that we have. We go and get Tuchel. Tuchel raises the profile because no one believed we'd go to win on the Champions League when he came in. He raised the profile of these players, of this club. We were celebrated by everyone in Europe, winning, Tuchel winning a manager of the year. We won club of the year, celebrated how amazing we've been. Tuchel doesn't get back last summer. We bring in a goal scorer, yes, in Lukaku, but not a forward that suits the way Tuchel plays. He doesn't get to build his squad. He wanted the likes of Afram Hakimi. He wanted Orlan Chouameni to come in. We were linked with Koundé to come in to build this squad. He wasn't able to last season. He wasn't able to get rid of players that weren't good enough last season or last summer. It hurt us to a detriment. A few injuries to key players in the 11 and we fell apart. And all of a sudden, it's looked at, it's Tuchel. I understand there are some things with Tuchel that have been frustrating and he should have done better with. But for the majority of the part, this squad just isn't good enough. Enrique will come in and he'll go on a bit of a bounce. And he will also struggle because of the squad. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're absolutely fine. This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, Chelsea in the last year or so have been in a bit of transition continuously. Then, of course, Abramovich had all the issues that he did, and Chelsea were obviously in limbo, and he needed to get rid of the club. So I'm not sure that the club can be blamed for not getting rid of players last summer, and certainly not Tuchel. I don't. Obviously, that's not his job. But obviously, it didn't leave you in a very good position. But you mentioned about sort of getting players in and things. It's a really bad time to sack a manager. 6 games in, after 1 game in the Champions League, you spend 250 million on players, and it's now added. You talk about getting rid of players and having a squad that's sort of from 4 different managers essentially, and now you've spent 250 million more. Going to have to get another manager in, and then how do you deal with that? It's only going to become exponentially worse. Do you not think?
Yeah. Well, I still think I don't know. Like maybe because I'm being optimistic, or maybe delusional, whichever word you want to use. I still believe we will get top 4 because this squad, as much as it's not good enough to compete at the highest level for titles consistently, but to get something as simple as top 4, the squad is capable of doing that. And if it's with Tuchel now gone, if I don't know if it probably looks like it's Potter it is that we're getting, or if it's an interim or whatever it may be, I still expect that bare minimum to come to fruition. But after that, I don't know. Like one of the big a director of football needs to come in. Like we need a quality director of football. We can't continue doing this. Only traveling around Europe. Yeah,
just to interject quickly. No, you're right. I was told today that Potter is the man. They have some sort of agreement, and it should be announced tomorrow. But something that Potter was very, very keen on asking was he needs a director of football.
exactly.
Can they give him that reassurance that that's going to happen? Sorry, go on, carry on.
Yeah, exactly. We need that. Tuchel himself, like when Paulie said Tuchel's in charge of transfers, I look at that as a bad idea. Maybe you can say as a stopgap just for the summer, but we need a director of football. We can't continue being run like this. And just splashing, because we spent a lot of money this summer, and a lot of these signings, though of quality, yes, we could have found other alternatives for a little bit cheaper. Fofana, I rate, but spending that much money on him, there are better centre backs out there for cheaper. Or maybe I guess just as good, maybe not say better. For Cucurella, I'll rate him, but for that price, there are other fullbacks or wingbacks I would rather we had bought. Like we're overspending, and we've done this previously in the past. Last summer, we spent 100 million on Lukaku because we needed a goal scorer, but we were haggling around on the money for Haaland. We spent like 80 mil in total on Bakayoko and Drinkwater a few seasons ago because we needed a central midfielder. You know, we spent, was it 60 mil on Alvaro Morata like 5 years ago, because we needed a striker, even though the target Conte wanted was Lukaku, and we were haggling over a price tag. 3 years ago or 4 years ago, we Courtois screwed us over. We were looking at Alisson to come in, but again, we were haggling over money. Liverpool got Alisson, and we panic bought and spent 72 mil on Kepa. We bought Havertz 2 summers ago because COVID had happened, and every other club was in kind of financial disarray. And Chelsea, because we had money from player sales, we were able to buy Havertz just because he was an opportunity to buy a potential quote unquote generational talent, was the tag going around for him, even though he didn't suit how we played and we didn't need a player like that. It's just a waste of money continuously. And I hope Bowley doesn't do that. I hope Bowley understands that he needs footballing minds to help run this club, or else we're going to end up being like, you know, like a Man United or something, just spending ridiculous money but not doing it. We'll win the occasional FA Cup, maybe fluke a Champions League or something, but we won't do anything of note consistently.
Yeah, I agree. No, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think you mentioned about overpriced transfers this summer. I think that's very much been the case. But I think that with new owners coming in, there's been a lot of, obviously, news outlets, journalists that have said about the amount of money that's going to be there and the amount of money that's going to be under disposal. And when you're going for your prime targets, and let's be honest, Chelsea missed out on a number of top targets and they had to fall back. And at this point, other clubs were then aware that they needed those players, a bit of desperation. So they were able to sort of pull your pants down, essentially. I mean, it happened to us with Maguire. They knew we were desperate for a defender. So Leicester said, look, you can have him, but you've got to pay 80 million. Exactly the same sort of things happened this time for Fofana.
True, but like I look at the way City are on, and I know City are a rival to both of us, but like we can't deny the way they're run is as close to perfection as you would want a club to be. City in the past, they've missed out on certain targets. You know, when the summer we got Jorginho, City wanted him. Instead of wasting money foolishly, like Chelsea would have done, or maybe Man United would have done, they waited another year, scouted, and they got Rodri. You know, they wanted, for some reason, I don't know why, but they wanted Harry Maguire the summer you guys got him. Instead of spending money foolishly on a different, you know, C-list centre back, they waited, I think, 2 years, and then they got Diaz. Like City do this a lot, and it's just so frustrating seeing the fact of we've got the money to be ran properly, but we don't implement it, you know, properly. I guess I don't. It's. I'm not like angry. A lot of Chelsea fans are angry about the Tuchel sacking. I'm not so much focused on that per se. It's just the whole situation of how we're ran. And to be fair, if it wasn't for the fact that we got sanctions and stuff, Roman would have sacked Tuchel as well. So we still would have been in this situation.
Yeah, we were talking backstage about obviously the next target. Obviously, I said a moment ago it's probably going to be Graham Potter. Jamie is a massive fan of him, and Ladimus obviously came across that you weren't too impressed by that. And I'm sure Jamie will come in when he needs to about why he thinks it would be a good appointment. But
absolutely.
Why would you not? Why wouldn't you be so impressed with that, Ladimus? And who would you rather go for?
I think Graham Potter, he plays an attractive brand of football for the level Brighton are at, and that's fine. But I think a lot of football fans get, what's the word? They get tricked or fooled about attractive quote unquote football, but without real end product with it. Brighton for what, like Brighton when they step in and play in the big games, and by big games I'm really looking at City and Liverpool because they are the superior two teams in the league, and in terms of Europe, they don't do as well against them. Look at Potter as another Brendan Rodgers, Pochettino Roberto Martinez-esque manager. He plays attractive football for that level, but when he's had to step up, it hasn't gone as well. As someone put in the weekly Armchair Sports, Potter similar to David Moyes. Yeah, David Moyes, brilliant at Everton. People talking about making a step up, went to Man United, didn't do as well. Poch was brilliant at Southampton, and he started off brilliantly at Spurs, built that team up to a level where we were expecting, title races and winning the league or winning a trophy. Wasn't able to get over that line. Roberto Martinez was praised at Wigan, and he even won the FA Cup. He goes to manage Belgium, and I know international football is a different style slightly, but having the quality players, you have a prime Hazard. You've got KDB at his best. You've got the best of Alderweireld and Vertonghen. You've got Lukaku in his goal scoring peak, and you're not able to at least get to an international final. Never mind go on and win it. It's similar to that with Potter. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being too harsh. But to me, he hasn't proven that he's able to take that step up. And it's similar with I'm someone who rates Nagelsmann, but he got hired at Bayern Munich last season, and you've seen he's still struggling with making that step up in these big games. And maybe it's a thing of Potter needs to go to an in-between club to prove that he's ready for the big step up yet. I think going from Brighton to Chelsea is a major. You're skipping like 2-3 steps in that. That's just my opinion.
So my thing about Potter, and is as much as I would love him to stay away from Chelsea and to continue developing himself, but not again because I'm saying that there's anything wrong with him going to Chelsea. I just think I agree with you to the extent that the step up would be incredible. Like, you think he's been at Brighton for 3 years now. He took over just after Chris Hughton was sacked, and Brighton had managed to stay in the Premier League by the skin of their teeth, like once again for the second season going. 3 years on now, Brighton are easy top 10. One of the teams that if they finish in the top 8, if they finish 7th or whatever ahead of whichever one of the top 6 decides to have a poor league season, you sort of just go, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that, because the way he adapts players to his brand of football, the way he gets a tune out of everyone and utilizes the squad, I think is fantastic. He gets a tune out of Danny Welbeck, and Danny Welbeck was deemed surplus to requirements at both United and Arsenal. Yeah. The best part of six years ago. So for me, the development that he brings to that squad, I just think he's a big fan of football. I think he just loves coaching. And I don't think he'd feel the pressure necessarily of taking the step up. I think what you'd end up with is a young, exciting manager who would play an attractive brand of football, but where results are also part of his game plan. This is a man that turns up and just turns teams out just for fun. You don't really see pragmatism from Graham Potter, which is something I've seen from Tuchel his entire Chelsea tenure. I said back in the summer, I was like, I really think Chelsea will struggle this year. And when all the pundits and stuff like that were putting them in their top 4, they were definitely going to finish top 4. I had my reservations, and I've said a few times that I thought they were going to struggle this year because of the profile of their squad. They obviously, you were very good a few years ago. Obviously, you won the Champions League because Tuchel got that beat out of the squad. But the likes of Kante, Jorginho, you've got Thiago Silva was one of your best players last year, but he's getting on. The squad itself is aging, and there didn't seem to be any young blood and excitement coming through to reinvigorate it. And I do think that Graham Potter would actually be a good manager to get a beat back out of these players and to find a spot for them. The problem is, and this is what me and Mark were saying just before you joined, is that I do think the problem now is that he'll be doing that with Tuchel's squad and the signings that Tuchel haphazardly made. Because, this summer, you were after Koundé, there were links with Lewandowski at one point, links with Rafinha. There seemed like a 30-man shortlist. Barcelona pinched, 25% of them. The other 25% of them didn't come, and then the 50% did. And my fear now would be Graham Potter walking in and going, I don't have the players at my disposal that I necessarily would have signed. I've got to wait till January to bring in the key players. And I do think one of the key players probably be Moises Caicedo. You'd be looking at Robert Sanchez. But I think what you'd end up long term is a project with Potter. It's whether or not Todd Bowley has the nous about him, the patience about him to bring a different style and a different flavour to Chelsea, different to what we've seen over the last 2 decades, where he gives a certain manager a set amount of time. If the fans can turn around and go, you know what, this is a brand new manager, we need to accept the fact that we might not be at football's top table for 2 years. Will we give him time and patience? Because I think if they do, Graham Potter is a phenomenal choice. If not, you're going to end up with Luis Enrique. So it wouldn't surprise me someone like Lopetegui. Like, even though I know he's struggling, but he's the sort of signing the managerial appointment that happens now. You'll get 18 months out of him. It might win you a cup. Unai Emery. Do you know what I mean? These are the things that if Todd Bowley follows the Roman Abramovich formula, I do think that you'll end up repeating the same cycle every 18 months to 2 years. So I think Graham Potter's a really good punt. I hope he stays at Brighton. I really do. I really want to see him develop and not end up getting sacked in 18 months and regressing and taking time out of the game. And I really don't want to see him go and be a massive success at Chelsea. I can't lie. But other than that, I think he's a top coach.
I hear you about developing players, and something I will say, I mean, I want Potter, but if we get him, I will give him time. I'm not someone who has agendas and narratives and stuff. I will, because I know the big problem with this, with the whole thing, what's going on at Chelsea, at least on the pitch, is these players. A lot of players in the squad are just not good enough for us to make that step up to challenging at the highest level. The squad needs to be rebuilt. I think Potter could do that potentially if he's allowed and backed properly, and we have a director of football. Potentially, I think Potter could do it. Can Potter then make the step up with an elite squad to winning league titles and winning Champions Leagues? Probably not. I don't know. But if he can build a squad, then he should be given at least a chance to see. And I'll back it. I'm someone who'll be patient and I'll give it time. And I know it will take 2 years, maybe 3. And I was willing to also do that with Tuchel. But the way my fan base is, a lot of Chelsea fans didn't back Tuchel even after winning the Champions League. My fan base is very volatile. And a couple of bad results from Potter, particularly the fact that the guy hasn't done anything of note on the highest stage, the biggest level. A lot of Chelsea fans will turn quite quickly if he has a few bad results in a row. Like you saw last season, Brighton fans, midway through the season, Brighton were getting a lot of draws and losses and stuff, and Brighton fans turned against him.
Keane, just very quickly, Keane in the comments made a very good point here, and I think Jamie alluded to this earlier. Potter has used young players through his academy, through the Brighton academy, and obviously got a very keen eye for the younger players. With Chelsea and the amount of their academy, they've got some incredible young players that don't ever seem to break through. That could be a real plus from that perspective, do you not think?
Yes, I do. Hopefully, but my thing is, just because we bring a player through and he does a job for about a year or so, doesn't mean that we don't then try and progress and get a better player than him. I saw what Spurs under with Poch bringing through the likes of Harry Winks into their squad and not trying to get better in that midfield, and they regress.
Harry Kane as well.
Yeah, true, but Harry Kane's he's exceptional. I'm talking about the players that are kind of because we have that at Chelsea, getting the likes of Ruben and him coming through, the likes of Cho coming through, and them doing a job for a year or so, but their true ability shines through, and they're just ending up stagnating and being average. That's my point, because I think I've got a different view from our academy than the majority of people, but I don't rate everyone that comes through our academy. I think only a few, Mount, I don't think is that great. James has been amazing, but even he could potentially stagnate if we're not improving properly as a club. And I don't want that from him.
I've got to agree with that. I think Reece James is fantastic. I think whereas people bang on about Trent and stuff like that, Trent's attacking is obviously phenomenal, but the guy cannot do the basics of defending well. We go back 2 years and people used to bang on about Wan-Bissaka's defending, but he couldn't do the basics of attacking well. And I always said, Reece James is the perfect blend of he's phenomenal attacking, but he's also a great defender. And I think Chelsea have a massive talent on their hands there. But I agree. I'm glad Mount was mentioned, because, and I don't even mean to slate him, But I genuinely do not understand what Mount brings as a football player. And I've said this for ages. Like, he's not a 6, he's not an 8, and he's not a 10. He seems, he's been poor this season so far. I know the Chelsea squad have been quite bad, but there just seems to be this aura around him that he's untouchable, that he gets straight into the England squad all the time. He seems to be the first name on the team sheet for Chelsea, even though when he's in a poor run of form. And I'm interested to get sort of a Chelsea fan's opinion on, do you think that Mount has been overrated since he got brought back from Derby by Lampard? Where do you think he best fits into that system as well? Because everyone I ask, and they never know where he operates best in that midfield.
Mount's a forward. His majority of his Chelsea career has been spent him playing in the forward position, either on the left, on the right, or him playing as like an advanced 10, like a second striker. He hasn't. The only times he's played 8 was Frank's half season, and that was for a few months. Majority of the time he's been played advanced further forward. I think he gets extremely hyped and overrated by our fan base. Again, mainly because he came from the academy. Like, if he was a 40 mil player that we'd bought, Chelsea fans would have a completely different viewpoint, because his performances haven't been good enough on a consistent basis. I think he'd be a good squad player in a title-winning team, a very good squad player, because he's someone who does work hard and will put in tactical performances in certain games. But on a consistent basis, Mount should not be our best player.
Yeah, just another quick question for you about Potter before we move on. I'm going to talk about Todd in a moment. Just to let everyone know in the comments, it's 2-0 to Napoli against Liverpool, so it could be Klopp following Tuchel very soon.
Yes, but, at least we're not alone. Let's go.
Well, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It's I mean, it's a ridiculous situation. I genuinely can't believe that Tuchel's gone, and it's absolutely mad. But Jamie was saying backstage, if Potter was Spanish in a different league, do you think he would be a lot more appealing? I think that sometimes people get concerned about English managers that come through, playing the football, the exciting, the attractive, aesthetically pleasing football. But do you think that would be different for everyone? Do you think everyone have a different idea if he wasn't English?
No, I don't think so. People don't view. I know Potter is English, but people don't view Potter as an English manager. The way Potter gets spoken about is how people have spoken about the likes of Marco Silva when he was in the Prem and he got all that hype when he first came, or they spoke about the likes of Roberto Martinez when he first came. He's getting a lot of hype and praise about him. He's not being spoken about like Brendan Rodgers, bottle job. He's English. He's not being spoken about like Alan Pardew or Tony Pulis or anything. He's getting a lot of praise, which again, maybe it is warranted. Maybe I'm probably wrong and he'd be brilliant at Chelsea. But I just think taking that step up from Brighton to Chelsea is big. It's not just about coaching and developing players. There's now a different expectation. Brighton, when they go and play Man City, when they go play Liverpool, and if they lose 3-1, they lose 4-0, no one's going to get onto Potter and say, he's terrible. If Brighton go on a poor run of form like they did last season, no one's going to say, should Graham Potter get sacked? That won't get mentioned by the media or by maybe some Brighton fans, but that won't get mentioned by the media. With Tuchel, like for example, this run we've just been on, all of a sudden he's just got sacked. Like that will happen with Graham Potter if he goes on a poor run. There's a different expectation at Chelsea. And never mind taking another step up and going to Man United. Like I think it's that expectation that I don't know. I think he needs to go to another club or maybe go abroad where you have a chance of like winning trophies on somewhat a consistent basis before he can come back in, because he's expected to do well. You can't. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, I've always said I think the perfect club for Graham Potter to go to next is Spurs. Like it just reeks of a good opportunity for him where there isn't much pressure on him. It's a big enough club that he deals with the step up, but without the rampant demand for success that fans have been spoilt with. I think that's where Moyes' obviously downfall was with us, was we had such high standards. It's been the same with you over the last, to be fair, coming on 20 years, isn't it, realistically, of success. And I think that's why Arsenal, Mikel Arteta got time, because they're used to not having that success. And I think that I've always thought that Graham Potter suits Spurs. But now that this has happened, I do think that it could be an option. But I fully get what you're saying. I know what you mean. I think that the next step for him going abroad could be a really good shout.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. We could have him tailor made for after Ten Hag. That'd be beautiful for me.
And the thing is, maybe
actually,
him coming, like everything I've said, I understand there'll be growing pains. So I won't be on Potter's neck after like a few months and stuff. Like, he deserves 2-3 years to properly rebuild this squad. And I get that, and that's fine. But I know what my fan base is like. And after a few bad results, maybe we get spanked by City or something, and we have a few bad results against a Bournemouth or Fulham or etc. In a year or two's time, Chelsea fans will be complaining about Potter not being good enough, and we should sack him and get another manager. So, like, I know my fan base is impatient, and that might seep into Bowley, because again, we don't know really what he's like. He might be another kind of Roman-esque. Maybe he's like Kroenke or the Glazers or Levy. We don't know. So that's a big factor of it's not like with Roman, where we know with Roman after 2-3 years we'll win a league or so, and then we'll sack the manager and get someone else. At least we knew what Roman was, But like with Bowley, it's such an unknown that I can't say anything either way, because anything could happen.
Yeah, anything could happen indeed. I've just got a few more questions really for you about Todd Bowley. Obviously, massive changes obviously over the summer. Huge shock to everyone, I think, with obviously Abramovich and everything that came out and him having to leave. I've had this conversation with many people, some Chelsea fans, quite a few Chelsea fans. And this isn't me saying this because I want this to happen to Chelsea at all. I promise you that. But I just feel, I have to go on track record, obviously being a Man United fan that has the Glazers in place. Someone that's come in who owns a baseball team that doesn't necessarily know the process of football. And obviously they do bring this very much franchise-esque mentality with them. How do you think Todd is going to fare? Because I genuinely do worry for Chelsea fans. So far we have seen a very scattergun approach with the players that we spoke about, going for top targets and missing out potentially. But I do worry for Chelsea fans, because I think that until he gets the right people, and I know it's early days and we've got a long time yet, but I'm not sure that it's going to be as rosy for Chelsea fans as they think. I understand the whole excitement behind a new owner. We're going to get lots of money. We're going to get all these lots of players, and he certainly has done that in this over the summer. But whether they're the right players is still another question. But how do you feel he will fare?
I don't think. I think the Bowley is is bad like the Glazers and FSG and stuff. But also,
sure.
my viewpoint. But I get But the thing is, my viewpoint of FSG and the Glazers, I don't think they're necessarily as bad as what they're made out to be by United and Liverpool fans. I think they spend a lot of money, and that money could be utilized properly if only they had proper, like Man United. If Man United had a proper director of football and you had footballing minds around the club, with the money that the Kroenkes spend on a regular basis, they would be fine. You wouldn't get any complaints from United fans. FSG is responsible for Liverpool winning a title, winning a Champions League. This tag about Liverpool having best manager, best defense, best everything, being amazing, is because of FSG. they had a director of football in place in Michael Edwards. They had Jurgen Klopp. They had the structure in place to go up there and be successful. And I think that's what we need. And to be fair, that's also what Roman had in his first 10 years or so. Roman, he had the structure behind him that he could put money in place, bring in the right players to lead the right people to lead the club, which goes in place to hiring the right managers and buying the right players to be successful. I think that's what Bowley needs to do. If Bowley thinks he can do everything by himself, then Chelsea won't be successful as a club. But if we bring in the right footballing minds in place, thus in place bringing in the right manager, thus in place bringing in the right players, I think we will be fine. So it's a nice edge. And I don't know. Bowley's made a lot of promises in his lead up to buying the club, and he needs to, follow through on it. So I can't have an opinion either way. I don't know, but I know what I'd rather he do, and I'd rather he hire the right people in place to run the club properly.
I think my thing from what I've seen and what I've been reading about Bowley and his plans for Chelsea, I think obviously because I'm right in saying that he owns a baseball club over in America. It does seem to be this disparity between American franchise owners coming over and involving themselves in the English game and not being able to almost detach himself that one sport isn't run like this the other. You see reports of Armando Broja being offered a 7-year contract at Chelsea. This is a guy that can't even get into the first team. You get sporadic minutes here and there. But then somebody compared it to he did it with a baseballer. He's signing them on 7-year deals because that's the done thing. There's again talks that Graham Potter, if he agrees to join Chelsea, will again be offered a 7-year deal as a manager. Which the only other people I can think of that have been offered anything like that in the Premier League are David Moyes and Alan Pardew. And we know how they went.
I think Chelsea have done that before, though. We did it once, and I think there was a trend we were starting to do, but because of the player, it wasn't successful. When we signed Kepa, signed him to a 7-year deal. And I know, again, the player was bad. We shouldn't have signed him. But the player we should have signed was Alisson. And we had brought Alisson in, a potential world-class goalkeeper at the time, tying him down to a 7-year deal. Like, that would have worked. So I think I understand the mindset of tying down your best players or potential best players to a long-term asset. So it's not like in 2-3 years' time, it's easy for them to be
the
bought
only
by
thing I'll
another
say
club.
on that, I agree with players, but I think there's been this mentality, particularly over the sort of last 7, 8, 9 years, really, where managers don't get the long-term deals just because there's so much risk involved and there's so much turnover. They don't tend to give the managers long-term contracts. So I'm just surprised that he might do it for that long. Sorry, Jamie.
Players are a weird one as well because long-term contracts for players are great in hindsight. Like, yes, if you'd have signed Alisson and signed him to a 7-year deal and he became the player that he is today at Liverpool, then yes, that's absolutely a fantastic transaction. But the problem is that if you sign a player to a long-term deal and they don't return on the investment that you've made in them in terms of their performances, you then locked yourself into a long-term contract with an asset that is hemorrhaging money because their transfer value doesn't go up. They're probably on quite a lot of money. Teams don't really necessarily come in for them. We've fallen foul of it so many times with players because we give them deals that are too long or we extend their contracts and we trigger the extensions to try and maintain some asset value. Look at Phil Jones. The guy joined the club in 2010? He's still around then, 2010, 11. He's still around it in 2022. He doesn't play for us. We can't do anything about it because he's on wages, because he was on a long-term deal. So I always think it's quite tricky. Like, Armando Broja's clearly got talent there. Don't get me wrong. I think he was great last season from what I saw. And I do think it was interesting that Havertz was continuing to lead the line for Tuchel and Broja wasn't starting. But locking him into a 7-year deal, if you necessarily can't guarantee him the minutes, you end up with, a player that becomes want away. They become unhappy sitting on the bench. Their market value decreases. They're on big money because you signed them when they were a good prospect. So it's an interesting one. I can completely see the value of it if it works out. But then if it doesn't, and I think that's where Bowley maybe needs to take his American owner hat off, and his franchise owner over in the States, and get to grips a lot quicker. And I do think you're right with a director of football coming in might help with that transition. You need somebody around a new football owner that knows the game. And just to rebuttal on one of your points, regardless of who was around the Glazers or what football people were around the Glazers, they would still be absolutely lambasted at United. Nobody would want them anywhere near the football ground, because you don't need football people with you to go, the roof's leaking. We should probably fix that. But
Okay.
this isn't about United. This isn't about United.
Fair enough. I probably shouldn't have brought up United.
No, it's fine, mate. It's fine.
No,
We're always happy to try and, I get it from an outsider looking in. It's very difficult to see all the sort of nuances and everything, and it's very, very tricky. And obviously we absolutely appreciate that, and it's no problem at all. But obviously we're always happy to try and fill people in. And you're right. The Glazers have spent a lot of money, but with that, they've, as Jamie's already said, tied a lot of players down to big contracts. They've bought on a lot of commercial players, which are going to generate them their money. And of course, none of that money that they've invested is theirs at all. It's all been the club's. But anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, that's what. But I don't know. Like Bowley wanted to do. He spoke this summer, and they're transferring the open about making two big marquee signings. And we signed Sterling and Koulibaly quite quickly. And yet there were still talk of the marquee signings. We were linked with, remember that period? We were linked with Ronaldo and we were linked with Neymar. And obviously that didn't come to fruition. But we're still being linked with Ronaldo. And there's rumors that we could get him in January, which Tuchel didn't want Ronaldo. Tuchel's working with Neymar and still turned him down as well. So I don't I hope Bowley, again, that's why I keep praying for footballing people to run this club. I don't want Bowley to go down the route of the big marquee name. Let's bring him in, and it starts disrupting things and makes things worse. I don't know. I don't know.
Just on that, I was reading something again today that said that apparently there'd been some friction already between Tuchel and Bowley, because Tuchel apparently was very upfront and adamant to him that he didn't want Ronaldo, but Bowley kept trying to convince him and kept saying that he wanted him at the club because he wanted the franchise player. So maybe there's a bit more behind the scenes then to the sacking, and it isn't just necessarily performance based. And if the stories are to be believed, maybe Bowley is hell bent on signing some big franchise player. And look, I just want to say as well, I thought Sterling was a brilliant bit of business, both for you and for City. City recouping the money they paid for him 7 years ago, and you getting one of my favourite. I shouldn't probably say that, should I? Because he plays for City,
non-United players. No, that's fair, mate. He's one of mine.
He's a baller. Do you know what I mean? And I think that was really good business. So I think that was a good signing. I just wanted to put some positivity out there for the Chelsea fans.
He's a Man United fan as well, Sterling.
Is he?
Yep. He's him and Jordan Henderson, believe it or not.
Wow. You can have Sterling when he's 33 years old. How about that?
No, we're good. All right, listen, we're going to... Wait, do you want to add anything else, Ladimus?
I don't really know. If I keep talking, I'll probably keep ranting. So let's
No, but this is what it's all about. Obviously, I know it's obviously fresh. The wounds are there, and it takes a little bit of time to heal. But we want to know how you guys, how Chelsea fans are feeling. It came as a shock to all of us today, and I don't think any of us expected it. And I know if I was to put myself in your shoes, I think I'd be pretty gutted. I think similar to Spurs losing Poch at the time. There was a huge division in the fan base, but he did miraculous things, and I think Tuchel, to get you from where you were, really at the time, to get him to Champions League final and then winning it, and then doing as well as you did last season, I think he's been unfairly dismissed, in all honesty. But it is what it is. Obviously, listen, we'll obviously evaluate how things go over time and how Todd does over the next couple of summers, and we'll get you back on, buddy, and we'll talk about it there and see what the latest is at that point. But we appreciate you coming on, my man.
Yeah, anytime, anything. Thanks you guys for having me on.
No, you're more than welcome. Thanks very much, mate. And it's good to get your views on it. Listen, guys, Napoli, it's half time at the minute, and they're 3-0 up against Liverpool. Absolutely annihilating them, which is always good to see. I'm sure that we can all look at it and rejoice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Klopp out.
Yeah.
Which
German
would be
managers are finito out here.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
It started with Ralph, ends with a Klopp. Yeah, listen. Anyway, thanks for joining tonight, guys. Some good comments in the comments, and it was good to read those out. And as I said, thanks, Ladimus, for coming on. Thanks, Jamie, for being my right hand man. And yeah, we'll see what the final scores are after tonight, and we'll be able to go in at Liverpool again tomorrow. But it's good to have everyone here, and we'll see you next time.